Perspectives, different views, one voice.
Welcome to the LDM Perspective podcast. My name is Kojo and I'm with my friends
Cam, Mo, Ali.
And our topic for this episode is there an agenda to push sexual education in our schools? I guess it's a bit broad regarding the curriculum because there's primary and secondary school. So I'm not sure how we want to tackle it. We could try to tackle both of them, or we could just do primary school.
I would prefer the primary school just because of how questionable the kids are
Okay.
and the implications of it.
So the question is there an agenda to push sexual education in primary schools? Let me give a bit of a breakdown on where we are at the moment. There is a lesson called PSHE, which is Personal, Social and Health Education. As part of PSHE, there is a subject in there called Sexual and Relationship Education, which is SRE. Now, in regards to schools, this has always been there. So this has always been part of the curriculum. However, it wasn't enforced by any educational board. So, for instance, if you have free schools, you could be teaching it different variances, different times. You could have it a bit more frequent. You could not teach it at all. During that period as well, parents could actually take their children out of classes. And Edexcel has issued some legislation which forces or makes it mandatory from September 2020 for these lessons to be compulsory for all children at a specific primary school. So that means that parents might not have the right to actually withdraw their children from these kind of lessons any longer. So I will delve a bit.
Well, hold on.
So before we start, what do the lessons and
That's what I was getting at.
sexual relationships?
So the PSHE, there's three core themes for primary school: health and well-being, and relationships, living in a wider world, so economic well-being and being a responsible citizen. So in regarding the health and well-being, they could go into what is meant by a healthy lifestyle. How do you maintain physical, mental, and emotional health and well-being? How do you manage risk at physical and emotional health and well-being? I won't go through all the list, but we could give a link of where this information is. So if we go to one of the core themes, which is relationships, is how do you develop and maintain a variety of relationships within a wide range of social and cultural contexts? How do you recognize and manage emotions within relationships? How do you respond to risky or negative relationships, including bullying and abuse? How do you respond to risky and negative relationships and ask for help? And how do you respect equality and diversity in relationships?
Coach,
Yeah.
what age group are they putting this?
This is primary school, so any child that's
From
under
5 to 11.
5 to 11?
Yeah.
5 to 11?
Yeah.
Hold on, from 5 years old, would they understand all of these terms?
Let me just talk about the last core theme, then we could delve right in, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you mind? Yeah, so the last theme is living in a wider world, so about respect for themselves and others, about rights and responsibilities and members of the families, about different groups and communities, respecting diversity, all that kind of stuff. As I said, there's an extensive list which we could share with our listeners. PSHE has been taught in schools.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.
My question is that from the age of 5 years old, did they understand these terms?
It depends on what terms, because if you're talking about health and well-being, maintaining physical and mental, then why not? It depends on what part of the core.
What 5-year-old will understand about physical and
It
well-being?
depends on how it's delivered, because you can deliver it in such a way to make them understand what you mean. You can incorporate things that they might recognize or that they have an interest in and sort of incorporate that into the learning. So you can also incorporate maybe cartoons or characters that they might like and say, what if, and give them scenarios to sort of educate them in
I
particular
understand,
ways.
but a 5-year-old,
You simplify it.
I understand, but a 5-year-old, right? For what I understand, are they not in a situation where they're learning? Everything is for them is just learning for now. So you bring in that terms like that to try and break it down to them, they're not going to take it in straight away.
Actually, I do have some documents. I could share more of what they'll be learning at that specific time.
Okay.
I'll let more go in.
I was going to say, what you've also got to understand is because they're such a young and delicate age,
Yeah.
and they're constantly learning,
Yeah.
they've also got to be able to cope and handle the emotions that they're learning at those ages as well.
Sure.
And my assumption is that is what that module or curriculum is kind of help them to cope with. So I'll give you an example. I've got a little 4-year-old nephew, and he was at the stage where he would have tantrums and stuff if things weren't going his way.
Sure.
Like he'll stamp, he'll do this, he'll do that. I know my little, my sister has another son who's 2 years old, and at their nursery, one of the babies started biting people to express their anger.
Sure.
And then all the other kids learned that. Do you get what I mean? And it's those kind of behaviours and emotions that they will develop that they may not know how to control or correctly handle, is what those kind of subjects will help support in that aspect.
I do understand, but I'm just trying to figure out in my head, because as a parent, when you have your children from the start, when they start to go to school, you've already starting to develop this stuff, you experience it, you kind of. So as a parent, from my understanding, you kind of teach them how to be within that area. But then when they go to school, what they're getting taught, and then bring it back to home, it's a two different thing.
Okay, so just before we get into that, so you asked a valuable question regarding the age and why are they actually being exposed to such information. So the key stage 1, so key stage 1 is the age of key stage 1, 1 second. Just did this. It's too much research. So key stage 1 is between the ages of 5 to 7. 5 to 7, key stage 1. And this is what they will actually talk about in these kind of conversations. So the learning intentions and outcomes. So lesson 1 will be keeping clean, which is token, object, story, bag, content. That's actually the resources that they use. But keeping clean, to understand some basic hygiene principles, know how to keep clean and look after oneself. Yeah. That's like one of the lessons that they'll do. Lesson 2 is like growing and changing. So that's to do with introduce the concept of growing and changing, understand that babies become children and then adults, know the difference between a boy and a girl baby or babies or whatever. No. Lesson 3 is families and care. So I'm reading this from it's called the Christopher Winter kind of principles. So this is principles that all the schools kind of use in order to actually deliver this. Okay. One thing to bear in mind though, even though it's outlined like this, it doesn't mean it will be taught the same way in every school. Depending on the resources, depending on how they will actually tackle that specific subject. So lesson 3 is families and care. So to explore the different types of families and who to ask for help. Know there are different types of families. Know which people we can ask for help. That's key stage 1, so that's 5 to 7. And then there's key stage 2, which, let me just check the age. Key stage 2 is, it's not 6 to 7. Key stage 2 is from, if you're 7, what year are you in?
7 to 9, obviously.
It will be 7 till they finish primary.
Year 11.
Oh, okay.
Till they finish year 6.
11.
And so that's key stage 2. So key stage 2, just going through this quickly, there's too much material.
So it'll be 8 to 11 then.
8 to 11.
Yeah, so key stage 1 is 5 to 7.
Yeah.
And then 2 will be 8 to 11.
Okay, so key stage 2, lesson 1 will be differences, boys and girls, to introduce the concept of male and female and gender stereotypes, to identify differences between males and females. The objectives, the learning outcomes will be understand that some people have fixed ideas about what boys and girls can do, describe the difference between male and female babies. That's all kind of covers that. So lesson 2 is differences, male and female, to explore some of the differences between males and females, to understand how this is part of their life cycle. So the outcome is describe some differences between male and female animals, understand that making a new life needs a male and female. Yeah? And then the lesson 3, naming the body parts, to focus on sexual difference and name body parts, describe the physical differences between males and females, name the male and female body parts. So this is kind of like the scheme of work that they kind of work under.
This is deep.
Yeah.
Especially the first
I
one.
don't think it's
No, it is.
Deep in what sense?
Yeah.
Because, first of all, the key stage 1, right? Learning to clean and etc. Your parents going to teach you that anyway. You learn from home, then you bring that to school. My question is, how the hell teacher has time for this? How would they have time for this to try and put all it? This is a lot. It's a lot for a teacher because a teacher, you take your children to school from 5 and upwards, from primary school. There's so much lessons anyway in general, right? And then those kind of stuff, it's like, yes, you are educating the children to learn how to become an adult eventually, learning these principles whilst they're in primary schools. I feel like the parents, they should allow the parent to be involved in this as well. It's like the children, the teachers and the parent, they need to combine and make this as one. They can't just allow this all to be in the teacher to able to do this. This is a lot for the teachers. Alone, they're doing exams. Alone, they have to do a lot of courses, and then this kind of stuff. Yes, they've done it before, but it's not as much as what this is.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.
Guys, let me bring it back in. Let me bring it back into what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
So what we're here to talk about is there an agenda to push sexual education in our schools? So you advising that there's a lot for the teachers to cover.
Yeah.
It's not, I guess in some ways we're not answering that specific topic. So one, I want to qualify from the information I've given. Do we feel like there is an agenda to push sexual education in our schools?
In terms of what you've displayed there,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think there's sexual educational kind of mentorship kind of being pushed to the child in that sense. Maybe there is identifying certain differences between the different genders in that sense, but I don't feel.
So in that sense, what I've seen, the actual material I've seen is that they'll have a picture of the naked body and they'll try to, like, pubic hairs, which is part of, like, what is it when you're going through a puberty and all that. So that's all part of the syllabus. So they'll go through that. They'll have a female, like, whole thing of a female body, whole thing of a male body, talking about different parts of the body and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess that in itself could be controversial, or like to some parents as opposed to others. You might not want the school teaching kids at such a young age. I guess teaching them about particular body parts and the functions of those body parts, especially from a sexual perspective. You might not. I'm speculating here. I mean, when we're talking about teaching young kids about body parts, are we talking about the key stage 1 that's going to have you?
So the key stage 1, just going through what I went through quickly. I know they mentioned body parts in that, so let's see. Yeah, so the concept of growing and changing, know the difference between a boy and a girl. And I think they talk about exploring the different types of families. So I'm not sure whether at this point here there is some material. So they look through like life cycle of, like, let's say newborn babies, family pictures. They'll have some lifestyle pictures, maybe some animals and those kind of stuff. But it's key stage 2 that they'll introduce the whole kind of body parts and all that kind of stuff.
I guess on one hand, it is something they need to learn. I guess the question is that the right time for them to learn about those sort of things? It's,
What is the right time? What is this thing about time?
I think it's fine. In terms of time-wise, to be learning what has been stated there, I think it's fine, only because those are the exact things they're going to be experiencing.
We are exploring children too early stage, and then what will happen is they're starting to be more sexual.
Your concern is that
there's
there'll
no
be
sexual element added to it.
But his concern is that this might cause the children to become sexualized from an early age. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's look at that.
the
Concern for the kids to be sexualized in an early age. I don't know. I think for me, and I've always been having this conversation, and we'll go to the other part of this conversation, which I think no one is really nailing on. I don't want to lead the conversation by being a bit biased.
Say it.
But in regards to sexualizing, look, a child, we're talking from 5 to 7, they know about their body parts. They know that they have a vagina, that they have a penis. Yeah. I'm saying at that stage, it's not necessarily something that they're talking about, but they're talking about how new babies, life cycle, all those kind of things. And I think it's very important. The reason why I say this, growing up in Ghana and going through kind of like education in Ghana, we had something called life skills where you talk about some things that sit outside normal education per se, the kind of book kind of stuff.
Okay.
And you talk about some of these things, keeping clean, hygiene, and all those kind of stuff. So I feel like at Key Stage 1, everything that's been mentioned, I feel like, yes, it should be taught. I don't feel, as a parent, I don't have any qualms against that, personally, because I feel like, yes, well, why should it not be taught? It's what I will say.
You just said Key Stage 1. What about Key Stage 2?
Yeah, okay, so going into...
But do you feel that there's a concern that children could become sexualized by learning about that information at that age? That's the point he's making.
I don't feel like there's a concern. Because what are they being exposed to then?
Maybe how it's delivered might be a concern.
You guys, are you guys forgetting we're in the 21st century here, and the way the media and the movies and the way stream things are happening, kids are so alert now.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is what the problem is, though. But the problem is not what the schools are teaching.
Yeah.
What you've just mentioned here, it's got nothing to
outside
do
of
with
the
what the
school.
schools are teaching.
Yeah.
What you're saying here is that these kids are exposed to other materials. I just feel, as a parent, these kids are exposed to so many different materials.
Yeah.
If you do not start by teaching your kids, and you don't want the school to teach these kids, then where do you want the kids to go to learn? And if we do say that time rise with regarding an age, then I'll ask you guys, what age do you feel is appropriate for some of these syllables to be
Can I
taught?
say my experience?
Yeah.
All right, my experience. When I was in primary school, I never understood anything. I was learning all of this stuff. Don't get me wrong, I learned them, but I was more alert when I was in secondary school, year 7.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's a big difference from primary school to secondary school. That's a big difference.
And who taught you these things that you learned then?
Well, the society, community, or when I went to secondary school.
And how did that shape your experience regarding these same things then? Because what we're trying to say here is that you have to be careful that these kids are exposed to these materials outside the framework of an educator. An educator could be a teacher or a parent. Yeah. It could be that some of these kids are exposed to pornography whilst they're trying to find some sort of anime to watch or some sort of game to play. Now, this is what we're saying here. If you're saying that you want to wait for your kid to get to a certain age, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying everyone, each to their own kind of stuff. It's that you just have to be wary of some of these things, especially stuff you've spoken about media. You can't watch something without kids being exposed to certain things that people might class as inappropriate. So based on your experience, that's what I'll say. So did anyone ever sit you down to talk to you about these kind of like sex, puberty, different body parts or anything like that? Okay, the school did?
My school didn't back then, no.
How did you learn about this?
Well, I think that's what I mentioned when I went in secondary school.
Trial and error.
No, we got taught.
It's like, what hole is it? What hole is it? No, we got taught. Take it out.
No, we got taught. We got taught in school in primary school from year 7. That's where it got.
What do you mean? You got taught in primary school or secondary school?
I mean secondary school from year 7. I meant that's what I mentioned.
So you got taught in the school?
Yeah, in secondary.
Okay.
In primary, year 7.
So you feel, from your experience, you feel that it's best to start teaching anything to do with reproduction or sexual organs
to be honest,
from secondary school?
To be honest, what I'm saying, yes, I agree to what your statement is. But what I'm trying to say, to be honest, right, children are getting younger, are getting sexualized, and then not only understanding this is being abusive as well, which is like certain parents are abusing the children in that kind of form. Once
we can't really,
no, but
we can't touch that. I think
can't really
we have to
touch
stay in the
we can't
scope
touch
of the
it.
conversation.
But what I'm saying,
having.
children are getting younger, are getting clever and smarter. Putting this into this system is allowing children to even more expose.
Well, it's educating them.
What is education?
You're
What do you call
educating
education?
them.
You're always talking about
You're
education.
teaching them something.
Yeah, but when it comes to the kids, you're saying that the kids should not be educated?
No, there's a certain limits to education and educating the children. And what I mean by that is,
Okay, let's break it down. Do you think let's just quickly, so if like a 6-year-old, do you think it's wrong to teach? Do you think it's wrong Do you think it's wrong to tell a 6-year-old boy or educate him about body parts, i.e. his penis and how it functions? Do you think that is something that he needs to understand because that's a part of him?
I think he will know that naturally.
How would he know how he
No, what are
functions?
you talking about?
How would he know how it functions?
Because he will know that that's his penis, and he will know that that's what.
Okay,
Part
but
of
up
his
until
body.
that point, you might know that's what he uses.
He knows
to
it's part of his
urinate.
body,
Yeah.
and he
But
uses it.
I wouldn't want I wouldn't want his teacher to educate him on that. As a parent, I would educate him that.
So you're saying, okay, so on one hand, you're saying, wait, let me just get, so on one hand, you're saying that such subjects or such things should only be taught by parents
That's what
and
I
not in
mentioned from the
schools. So you're
first
saying
one.
that it should not be taught in schools altogether. It should just be parents doing
Yeah, I
it.
think parents should be accountable from early stage. Learn. That's what I mentioned. That parents and teachers, they should work together to combine.
So you're saying the parents should do it and the schools should do that as well.
Not that the school should do it.
So how do the parents and teachers work together to
Well,
achieve it?
when for example, if my child knows that I've taught my child in that kind of aspect of, oh, this is your penis or whatever, go to school. It's not the children. I mean, it's not the teachers. Is right to be teaching my child within that segment of it because I've already done it as a parent. Is the teacher's understanding to teach my child other things not relevant to the sexual education because it's me as a parent.
So
who will do
what
it.
happens to the children that their parents haven't done that for them?
Well, I don't know, but I think a parent should have an accountable for that.
And I think what you have to understand is that the school system is there to educate,
Responsible for all
responsible
children.
for all children,
Not just
not just your child.
I understand that.
So
and maybe I have to take my
But
child.
what
and
he's
teach
saying,
and-
but I get what he's saying because he's saying, well, he should be able to make it's a choice of free will. If he doesn't want his child in those lessons, should he not have the right to take them out? He's not saying he shouldn't teach it. They can still teach it to the kids,
I'm not
whose
disagreeing.
parents don't disagree with it. But he should have the choice to remove his child from those lessons.
And that choice is not taken away. You
No,
can go
but
on the Gov website and you
The
can see
choice.
the
Okay, so
syllabus.
this is the stuff here. In regards to the actual syllabus, it mentions that anything that's to do with science, right? So anything that's to do with scientifically proven. So hormones, puberty, all these things are to do with science. You do not have the right to remove your child from those kind of subjects. So if it falls under science, then you don't have the right to. Because you need to understand a lot of these subjects, it's not taught in the general context of, oh, we're going to sit down. Sometimes it's taught through science, talking about science and talking about biology, about the body parts and all those kind of stuff.
Let me add this. You know what I'm worried about? You know why I'm saying that children shouldn't be taught by teachers? You know what I'm worried about? When the children starting to understand this, experience this, want to learn, I've known this, they want to experience afterwards.
Experience what? What are we talking
So
about? here?
just to
Learning what
correct,
appearance is, penis is, I don't get.
correct me if I'm wrong, but you said this will become compulsory in 2020.
Yes,
So-
September
So
2020.
September 2020.
Yeah.
So does that mean that parents don't have a choice to remove their kids from having this syllabus taught to them?
Perspectives, different views, one voice.
So this is why it has to be broken down, and you really need to understand this as a parent. So this, I always have to PSHE or PHSE, whatever it is.
PSHE.
Do you write it down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as part of that, there is SRE, which is what I mentioned to you guys before. So that's sexual and relationship education.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to when a lot of these conversations start happening, there was a protest, for instance, there was a protest in Birmingham where the head of the school made it as part of the curriculum to teach all students. And in Birmingham, there was a lot of like a Muslim congregation within the school system. And a lot of their parents were opposed to it. And I'm just looking at the article. So there's an article on the BBC. But it was published on the 29th of January, 2019. And you had a lady by the name of Mariam Ahmed who organized a petition for such subjects not to be taught in schools. But then, as I was saying, this petition is based on sexual and relationship education. Now, when I was reading this, there was part of the syllabus where I spoke about different type of parenting, different family systems. And part of it is to do with a man and a man as a relationship model, and a woman as a relationship model.
Yeah.
So in regards to this PSHE kind of thing, it's even got to the level where there are schools that actually have books, specific books, talking about these kind of different relationships within communities and how it's being taught. So when you're looking at their claim was more around that, because all this thing about sexual body parts and stuff was not what their main thing was. It was more about the sexual and relationship education part, the SRE part of the syllabus.
Okay.
Right? So with that, Ofsted released a statement as with some, so there was protests. Part of this kind of conversation is that when the school puts the syllabus together, they're meant to actually meet the parents and they're meant to engage the parents and show the parents what they are actually meant to be. I mean, my school, the school that I'm governor for, that's part of it.
Okay.
So when they actually set up that meeting, I want to be there because I want to see I genuinely just want to see what parents are like to these kind of things. So they're meant to invite parents over, go through the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's felt as if there is an agenda to push some of these things. But when we talk about gender, we have to talk about Western world and whatever is going on in the Western world.
Yeah.
But in the schools specifically, how they teach these subjects, they might throw out an open kind of dialogue in a class setting. So normally they'll split the classroom into two, boys and girls, and discuss this conversation. But they'll have an open conversation where they're not leading. They just throw it out there and the kids converse about it. And if the kids have any specific questions they want to ask the teacher, that's when the teacher actually steps in and asks these questions. Because I think some of the drawback that Ofsted have mentioned is that they don't want the kids taking these questions away unanswered and then typing in Google and then coming up with all sorts of things that is not in a structured kind of framework, right? Yeah. So I think on one hand, I could understand parents' concern. For me personally, when it comes to the sexual and relationship education part regarding these whole different family setup, but I wonder if the schools are not doing it, like, what is the role of the parent, or is it all right for the schools to be teaching such subjects, I would say?
When you say such
subjects,
what context are you referring to?
So this is the sexual and relationship education. So this is to do with the different same-sex relationship, and gay, lesbian, all those kind of stuff, and the materials. Transgenders, yeah, it goes, all that goes along with it.
I'm not happy with that being taught at primary school, but I can be accepting to it at secondary school.
Same here.
But I know that I definitely would have had that discussion at home with the child.
Yeah, same.
Prior to that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, same. I don't think I could agree to kids at primary school being taught about that. I think kids, I think for me, I think at that age they can be quite impressionable, and where they're impressionable. I might be myself short.
Very curious.
I've got to be careful how I word this.
No, they're very curious about that.
But would you?
It creates some form of curiosity, and it can feed into. I have to be careful how.
No.
I think it should be. I think it's
it causes curiosity, and there's always a risk that, through that curiosity, they might potentially explore certain things.
That's what I was saying.
Which can become concerning for some parents. I think that's probably the concern for some parents.
I get what you're saying. I don't know. Maybe I'm a very liberal thinker or something, but I know I will have children as young as 6, as young as 7, have asked me, such and such has 2 dads. And as a parent or an adult looking after a younger child, how do you respond to them kind of questions? Are you going to say, oh, that's because
you're too young to know that. You need to wait till you're 13.
Yeah, I personally would answer it.
is that what you're meant to say?
The 2 dads are in a relationship together.
So let me. This is the stuff I feel like in regards to what
you're making a completely valid point. I can't,
I think one thing I say regarding the Western world and whatever agenda people think that we live in a different world now. Yeah. The problem I have is that these kids are exposed to this day in, day out. The teachers are in different kind of relationships. The headmistress, whatever it is, they see it around them, right? So you're saying to me that the child that is 6 or 5, they're seeing all this information. All this information is going in. It's in their subliminal. And you went to wait till they're 6 or 7 years older, that's 12 or 13, to actually have this conversation with them. I personally feel like that's too late at that point. Because on that age, if you give them access to a mobile phone when they're in year 5 or year 6, just know that other children who might have been exposed to this might be sharing information on there. I say this personally because my child, we took him camping. So we do camping in August where we go like Peterborough. So whilst we were camping, I was holding his phone. And then I saw some group chat, some conversations that they were having, and I saw certain pictures on there. So I called my wife. I'm like, have you seen some of this? Because it's like, it's a bit alarming. And I think at some point as a parent, deciding the right time to have these conversations it's a bit difficult because you have to gauge your child what. So it's a bit thin. So I had those pictures and I spoke to my wife and I was like, what do we do about this? Because one, you go the whole thing about privacy and me checking up on him and all those kind of stuff. There's that conversation. So we were like, we need to talk to him about it. So we sat him down and we asked him that, so these images, what do they mean? Who sent it? Because for me, I don't like saying this is wrong, whatever. I don't want to enforce my beliefs. Not that I don't want to enforce my beliefs, but before I educate my child, I need to understand their thought process about that specific thing in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? So I was asking, what do you think of these images? So it was an image, a man, a transgender, about wearing like a thing. So I was like, in what context are you guys like using this information on your platform? And it's like, they're teasing someone about it, whatever not. So I just kept on talking. So what do you think about it? What does that make you feel? All those kind of stuff to really understand where he is. Because it was the first time where I was thinking, okay, maybe I might be a bit too late here. But what I'm saying here, though, just even using that example, is that you have to be really careful in this Western world that we live in. It's not even a Western world, but if any person has access to internet, you need to be really careful regarding the information that they are exposed to. As I said, these kids could be exposed to information from so many different angles, from playing a game, from watching a movie, from trying to watch anime or whatever it is. So if you're not having that conversation, plus they are seeing it around them, whether it's in schools, wherever it is, then where do you want them to actually have this kind of conversation?
Can I add to that? For me, having a children, or my child is growing up now, first of all, as a family, we will talk. We talk home. We discuss it. I don't want to sound too harsh. I don't want to sound like...
So that question that Mo asks, if your 6-year-old asks you that question, then how do you talk about it?
No, this is what...
This would be good for some people that are struggling now.
This is what I'm getting at. I always speak to we speak to our child and say, you know what? In this world, and what we know, what we believe, is only a man and a woman. That's what we make. We'll make that clear. We just need to make that clear. But whatever you want to do within your life, that's up to you. But just let you know that. You understand? I understand that I might be going off topic.
No, I think it's fair to say that. I think it's fair to say that. There's nothing wrong with saying that.
Implement that. I'm just letting them know that when their choices is their choices at the end of the day. But I will let them know. So listen, it's only a man and a woman. Whatever you want to do, anyhow you want to change your life, anyhow you want to go, it's up to you. But let us know and we will talk about it and see how we're going to bring that up in. But understand whatever you do in your environment or your community, you're going to see things. But if you're not quite sure what you want or what you want to do, come to us and let us talk. We're here for you. That's what we're doing. That's what I would do personally, because you are right. The way the world is going now, they are going to see this kind of stuff. It is right for you to talk to them, and it is right for you to wait for them to come and talk to you what the concern and how they feel. It is right. Don't enforce your...
But let's draw it back to the fact... do you want to...
I was just going to say, but are you always going to be reactive? Is it always going to be a situation where your child has come exposed to something and then they come to you and wait to come to you? Or are you going to engage in that conversation first beforehand?
Engage first.
All right, then what age would that be?
Yeah, from 5, 6.
I just wonder though, giving a specific example, if your child asks you that, I've gone to school today, so-and-so has 2 daddies or 2 mummies, how do you discuss that with your child? Because I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm saying it's difficult.
To them, it might not be unusual. I mean...
So what are you planting then? If people are saying planting a seed, do you know what planting a seed is? You don't necessarily have to be... Someone have to see you in class to say about it. You actually see it in life. That it's acceptable in life.
Yeah.
So there's no better way to plant a seed than to actually see that someone lives in a family that has 2 mums or 2 dads. Yeah. So if you're saying that you're not going to speak to your child because your child is too young to know some of these things, but they're exposed to it, then when do you... I find that it's a difficult dilemma. I'm not saying that anyone is wrong or right in their beliefs about this. I just feel like it's a very difficult dilemma to weigh out.
Guys, can I tap into this? For the way we bring in our children, we're not giving them phone onto the property after primary school. We're not giving it because what we're trying to do is have more activities, like travel a lot, be around them as a family.
Are you talking specifically in terms of smartphone?
Yeah, on a smartphone. Like we're not giving them any phone, even tablet. We're not doing all of that. Even having a TV at home, we're not having all of that. So it's more interactive with the whole family, cooking, going out.
They might have to do some of their homework on laptop though.
Well,
Yeah, some schools.
A lot of the schools now
Yeah,
is
a lot of schools move. I think they're even talking about doing some exams on
tablets and stuff
there
like
will
that.
be a limit, but in to say every time on the phone, whatever. No, we won't do that. That's our
And I
approach.
think with that one, it's a good approach. But one thing you have to bear in mind as well is that what their friends are exposed to, as I keep on saying. Because if they're in school and their friends have a phone and they're discussing certain inappropriate material that they've seen, then they will be able to see as well.
It all comes down to how you raise your child. It's either your child have a discipline within what they do, how they approach. I know.
I agree.
It's how you raise your child. Because I'll give you an example. My missus got a siblings, and these siblings, they Monday to Friday, they don't touch their phones. They don't touch any of it. In the weekends they do, but they go to school. Right? Obviously they see all of this, but they don't come home and start shouting, "Oh, we want our phone, our phones, our friends, this and that, having a phone."
So when you say they go to school, they see all of this. They see what?
Like they see their friend taking their phone to school and so on, but they don't come.
Where is that? Is that secondary school?
That's secondary school and primary school,
Okay.
but they don't do that. For example, so it's how you raise your child. Basically.
But for me, I guess what I'm trying to drill down here is the material that they're exposed to, not necessarily the device that exposes them to the material. So you're saying that in regards to dealing with this, one way would be not to introduce them to electronic materials at a very early age, or trying to limit their access to it. Is what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say here is that if they do go to school, they will have friends that have phones. So this same imagery that's going around, they will still be exposed to that. What I'm trying to say here is that if you could imagine that child, no one has sat them down to have these conversations. They will be learning from their peers. Their peers will be regurgitating wherever that they've got this information from upon them regarding their beliefs, if you get what I mean. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that it's very difficult because I am at that stage. I have it. My son is in secondary school, and when he started secondary school, that's when we gave him a mobile phone. But as we've seen with some of the information that they share on there, because it's linked to my laptop, I see the information that comes in and all those kind of stuff. Yeah. But I have come across some material that I have to talk to him about it to understand where do you even stand on this. And it's been, I have a nephew who is in year 5, and just to prep for this conversation, I thought asking him, because I went to the school to do this kind of review on sexual and relationship education for the syllabus, what the school's actually teaching. Now, obviously, because that curriculum is going to be compulsory from 2020, they're kind of they're trying to put together a whole new policy around this and then sit down with parents to kind of share it. So I was just asking him, what is he exposed to? Now, this is a child that uses laptop and all these kind of stuff. So they're exposed to a few materials. So when I was asking him, what is it? Oh, it's like he's even exposed to this so-called women agenda. He's standing there saying to me that, oh, I watch on YouTube these women talking about not needing a man in this world. Mate, you will be shocked. Some of the information that these kids are exposed to already. Yeah, I'm telling you. If a child has access to the laptop, they do a lot of gaming and all those kind of stuff on there. They watch a lot of YouTube videos about all sorts of impressionable people on there. You will be quite shocked the information that they're exposed to. He's talking about women's rights and women talking about not needing a man. And he's like, but they still need sperm. How can they make sperm and all that? He was having those kind of conversations with me, and I was like, oh, okay.
How old is he?
He is. How old is he?
He's in year 5, yeah.
He's in year 5, yeah.
10, 9 or 10.
We touched on, about them being taught about same-sex relationships. What about transgenders?
Perspectives, different views, one voice.
Yeah, but then I guess one thing I want to, before we even move on, is that is anyone opposed to that?
Oh.
To your children being exposed to being taught about transgender, gay, lesbian relationships or any stuff like that? Because I've had feedback. I think Kofi put it on one of our groups where he was more talking about the resources that are being used, like some of the books that
Mhm.
the kids are reading,
Mhm.
mommy and daddy, mommy and mommy, daddy and daddy,
Mhm.
those kind of resources.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm against that. Why are my kids being exposed to these kind of stuff? Which I felt like it was an interesting thing in the first place. But I just wonder what.
I think that comes down to two things, though. There's one, whether they should be exposed to it, and then two, how they would be exposed to it. So for me, I'm personally fine with them being exposed to it. It's the how part I would be more concerned in that aspect. Because
why would you be fine with it?
Because there's something they're going to come across anyway.
Yeah,
There is no getting away from the whole someone being transgender and LGBT.
Yeah,
and
but
all
why don't
this.
you wait until they come and exposed to it? Why should they enforce it now when they're young?
What, as in the schools?
Yeah.
To tell them when they're young.
Yeah.
Because then it's a more controlled exposure as opposed to them randomly coming across it in some kind of different context where there's no control in that aspect.
Yeah, but would it not be more better if they expose it?
When you say no control, what do you mean?
So let's say they, like Kofi mentioned, they're gaming or whatever and they come across it in, I don't know.
You call me Kofi?
So,
No.
Oh my days. This is like some prejudice against Ghanaians that have like the Kofi and Kojo and Kwame names, man. Seriously. Okay.
It's more accidentally them being exposed to it in a context that you have no control how that could accidentally be.
How that could shape their mind
Yeah.
in the first place. Okay. So moving on. Did anyone have anything to add before? This is from Ofsted in regards to making these kind of stuff compulsory. So I'm reading an article on the BBC again.
Hold on, I did want to mention one thing in
Yeah.
terms of, because you went through the whole curriculum and what they were doing, and I read an article basically which was talking about, this is an article in September 2019, and they plan on introducing to schools in which area? Hold on, I'm going to get the location. So this is hundreds of primary schools in the Wessex area, Warwickshire County Council
Okay.
wanted to introduce sexual education to as young as 6 about touching yourself lessons.
Oh yeah. Masturbation and all that. I didn't
Yeah.
mention it, but it's
All right.
It's
That's
part-
in there too.
And
I've got a breakdown. You go on. I've got some.
yeah,
other
and
things.
so that was one of the things that I was hoping would come up in what you was mentioning, because that's something I strongly feel against in terms of
Okay, so
how that would come about, or,
another part. So you do this key stage 2. Why do we need? So you remember I went through the key stages
Yeah.
and what were there, and then there is a breakdown here about why it's feel necessary to talk about this, and then there's also another breakdown about how would this be actually spoken about in maybe a class kind of scenario. But this is a policy for one specific school. So this policy might not necessarily apply for all schools. This is what I'm saying, that it depends where your children are going to school. And this is even makes it more important for you to be part of that conversation, to know what is being taught.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like anyone that's listening that is kind of feels a bit like this is wrong or they want more information, you need to get in touch with whatever primary school or secondary school and ask them for the policy around how they teach these subjects.
Yeah.
That's the only way you'll be informed to know whether or what your children are being exposed to. So on one hand, even if you can't do anything, the only thing I'll say you'll be able to do is you teach them before someone else teaches them.
Yeah.
Because then you're able to shape their mind in that way. But anyway, so going through this, there is a lot of information about this. So they talk about, so they have different charts. And this specific example, there's a chart about what a boy's body looks like. So description of the boy's body, penis, 2 testicles, hormones, and then they talk about happens, and boys maybe in regards to their hormones, it might be later than girls. And they compare the sizes of bodies in their class. Perhaps feelings and attitudes are different. Boys catch up a bit later. Then they'll talk about a man. So a man penis will grow larger. One usually hangs lower than the other.
Penis or balls?
Penis. That's the correct term.
penis and testicles grow testicles as well when they grow bigger.
Yes.
Yeah, so they talk about hair around the face, perhaps chest and all that kind of stuff. And there is a part where they talk about masturbation. Let me try to look for that part.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. This is off topic, yeah. So I don't know if you want to add this or not, but if kids are they know about this stuff, right? So if kids knows about this stuff, is it not much easier for pedophile whatsoever for them to able to engage it more?
No, I think
No.
I feel personally, if they know about it, then it's harder for
Quite
pedophile.
the opposite.
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
No, but
It's
would
the
it
opposite.
not be easier for also pedophile to groom them as well?
Nah.
If they know about it?
They actually
Not if
educate them.
they're, not if they're taught.
Not if they
already by
talk
school.
about it and educate about it.
The whole point of the grooming is that they are doing the teaching of the child.
But then
Yeah.
would not be also a time where there will be a law where once they understand this, young children understand this, there will be a law to say, okay, pedophile can be exposed or pedophile can be able to do whatever they want. In that way you might not
What
see
do you
where
mean
it's
do
going.
whatever they want? What are you trying to say? Sorry, I'm not catching what you're saying.
You know this system, I want to use like this Western way, this Western civilization. They have a way of how they're trying to bring things underneath slowly and then eventually allow it to be exposed, right? I can see that happening.
Okay, so just on your train of thought, this is desensitizing children where you're exposing them to sexual activity, and then you're saying that what this will lead to more increase in what pedophilia because
Because
so-
they can able to groom them.
so you say what the schools will now start introducing the Western world will then start what I don't understand how you allowing what pedophiles to
Okay.
What's your understanding of grooming?
Well, understanding grooming is just someone that's vulnerable.
how did they become vulnerable?
Well, vulnerable in all different kind of areas. It can be like they're lonely. It can be the fact that they want to learn more, or they're curious, or whatsoever. Because I'm curious, I've known something, but I wanna tap into it. So what do? I find someone that is allowing me, or my parent not, but someone that's allowing me.
So
to
what if the
expose it.
school has taken away that curiosity?
Well, the school wouldn't, because if I've been taught by the school, this is my body part, and etc. and etc. and etc. The next part for me as a child, I'm curious. I want to know more further. I want to allow the school to know. I want to allow my parents to know. I'll go somewhere third person to teach me even more further.
Isn't part of the curriculum teaching them about relationships,
Hmm.
so they would understand what are appropriate and
But then what kind of
inappropriate
relationship
relationships.
is that though?
But that goes into the curriculum that's being taught to them. I'm
We're
presuming
talking
that's
about
the case.
relationship. We're
Yeah.
talking about man and a man, woman and woman. We're talking about when they start off early with the babies, how babies are made, how animals make babies. This is all kind of like subliminal messaging to get you to that level to say that okay, now a man and a female have to come together in order for a baby to form in the first place.
I understand.
So that is all parcel of the end delivery. I felt like more of what you were saying is that this is kind of just desensitizing children to be a bit more sexually active, which would then lead to more pedophiles. I thought that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
If that's what you're saying, I think I disagree with it because I feel like schools teaching this will actually be more useful because the child will be more informed.
Yeah.
Because when you explain the grooming and people feeling vulnerable, they want to know more.
Yeah.
If it's an open conversation as well in regards to the setting, then more might bring up something I've been thinking about and we could all discuss it to get views. Plus, the teacher is there to step in to say, oh, you guys are saying this, but this is not actually what it should be. So everyone gets educated at that same time. This is why I feel personally, I think as a parent, I was quite concerned until I went to the school and I met the teachers and I saw some of the materials that they were using, especially around the relationship conversation, where I feel like if it's more of an open conversation, then you get the thoughts of all these children who'll be in the playground talking about it anyway, in one classroom. So you talk about it as the boys just sit there and talk about it. The girls sit there and talk about it because obviously you have people of different faiths, like different beliefs. And there are that belief system kind of conversation as well to be had. And then after you bring them in to have the general conversation about it. And I feel like personally, it's a good thing from what I've seen, from my initial concerns. So I feel like a lot of my concerns have been answered. I just feel like me as a parent, I just need to speak to my kids a bit more to understand what my belief system is And why? Because the teacher that was actually showing me this material said, it doesn't mean because I don't necessarily agree with it or I feel like there's a different way to live my life, I shouldn't teach the kids that there are different families. And this is the key thing. Because I don't feel like this is the way that you should live your life, or I live my life differently, doesn't mean there isn't other people that live their life differently.
What is the terms of family? Is it what?
What do you mean, Ali? I feel like I keep...
No,
Like,
no.
what do you mean?
No, what I'm trying to understand is, you're saying we are educating with the curriculum families as well. But what is the terms of family? Is it not just a man and a woman with their children?
That's one type of family.
That's one type of
Okay,
family.
then you go more in type of.
Then you have a man and a man.
and a man
with
and
their
a man.
children.
That's what I'm trying to say.
So you have
That's
a
what
woman
the
and a
terms I
woman.
meant by what the
You
terms
can
of
even have
family.
single parent family.
Yeah, single parent families as
You
well.
know, blended flam families.
Yeah,
with
and even
stepdad and,
with the books and resources, there's like single mothers kind of books, to say that there is a different type of family because
they wanna-
you belong in a
They
single
want to
mother family.
educate them all of this.
Yeah.
So then, is that saying in the future is acceptable?
It's
When it
not
comes-
about acceptance. It's about understanding. So it's
Why
being-
would you want to understand a man and a man as a
But-
family?
Okay. The society we live in today, these are the sort of, this is the makeup of the conventional family. You could have, a man and a man raising a child. You could have a woman and a woman raising a child. You could have a man and a woman raising a
I
child.
understand.
That's the makeup
I
of
understand.
society in this modern day.
I understand.
And in order for children to understand acceptance and tolerance of
Yeah.
other people, that needs to be taught to them in school.
I
They
understand.
need to understand that.
I-
They can't, regardless of how their parents feel, we're in a society where you have to have a level of tolerance and a level of acceptance. You might not necessarily agree with how someone,
Lives their life.
lives their life.
Okay,
but
wait.
you still need to
Where
understand that.
are we
There's
all
nothing-
going? Where are
there's
we all
nothing
going to
wrong.
this then? Where are we going to this then? If we're going to accept everything that, okay, imagine I wake up in the morning and I decided that I'm a lion today. Are you going to accept that I'm a lion? Are you going to be accepted?
I want you to
Now
roll
you-
every second, man.
Now
How's
you're
it-
very-
No, but you know what I mean? Where are we going? Where is it leading to? Where is this all leading to?
Because that's
It's a
another
good question.
that's another argument.
It's a
That's
good
another
question,
argument though. Because you're talking about the limits of society.
Yeah,
right?
it's-
but that's more to do with transgenders though. Because
Yeah.
you're talking about people
That's a
saying
different subject.
someone's born in a particular gender and wakes up
And
one
they
day
say
and
that
says,
they
I'm
feel-
another gender.
yeah.
How can that?
Well, then that's a family though. That can be still a
That's not
family.
a family.
Because at the end of the
That's
day,
an
I might say,
individuality.
No, but it's transgender
No,
could be a
that's
family.
an-
You could
yeah,
have you
exactly.
could have a child could belong to your school,
Yeah.
whose parent, one of their
Still a
parents
family.
could be, I don't know.
Well, it's not. It's fine. An ex-colleague of mine. She said that
It's a family setup.
she's-
If you
yeah,
get what I
she-
mean.
No, but the
on.
question is different.
What do you mean?
why is the question different?
Okay,
Because-
so let me
Because
tell you.
we're
So
talking
let
about someone's
It's
personal
finally
belief
heated up. These
as
guys were
opposed to
holding
how
back.
their
Now we're
family is
getting
made
there.
up.
God.
But let me interject. So
Sorry, Ali.
an ex-colleague of mine, and in fact, I'm taking. So their daughter,
Yeah.
who's in secondary school, turned around and said she's not a girl, she's a boy,
Yes.
and she went through an experience of very, very heavy depression to the point where she started self-harming.
Who? The girl or your colleague?
My colleague, my colleague's
Daughter. The daughter started.
started self-harming because she said she was a boy and wanted to be accepted as a boy. And, if you're a parent in that position and the child is behaving like that, what do you do?
But then
You can't turn
but then-
around and if that's their choice and they're saying this is
How
But then,
did that lead to
but then
that?
that's the
How
thing.
did that
With
lead to
Ali's logic here, how did they get this information to think that they could feel like they're a boy in the first place?
Acceptable.
Basically, what Ali is trying to say,
Mhm.
which on some of these arguments is like, if they're exposed to these kind of conversations that, oh, it's okay, humans could be whatever not, then a child could just turn around to say, I'm a boy in that context.
Yeah.
And then that throws in even more confusion because they should not be exposed to that kind of information at that young, early age. Is basically
It's
what.
perfect time.
You're basically saying where are the limits with this because we could get people going to the extreme saying like what's next? I'm really a lion or a leopard. That's what you're basically.
No, but then you are right. But then I guess it goes back to the conversation of what's socially acceptable, right? Because, for instance, for myself growing up, no one ever told me about lesbians or gays or anything like that. But when I started working in the music industry, I was exposed to a lot of lesbians and a lot of gay people. Now, did I feel like there was? I was just like, I've always been under understanding is that That's your personal choice.
That's it.
It's your choice if you live like that. I don't live like that, but it doesn't mean we can't get along. It doesn't mean that I have to call you names or anything like that.
And
Do
where
you
did
get
you
me?
learn that from? How did you?
It's just from my upbringing. I grew up in Ghana, where this is not an issue in Ghana.
No.
Like, I think you don't discuss this because it's not seen as an issue in Ghana. Not that you will not see some of these things. Don't get me wrong,
you will see
but
it,
it is not part and parcel. Growing up at that age, this was never seen in Ghana. Like, these conversations will not be had. But I was growing up to just accept people. I don't know. Maybe my ideology is different. But what I'm saying here is that if at work you're exposed to it and you think it's fine, then on one hand you're saying to your children that, I don't know. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I'm a bit I'm a bit confused in everything. It's like, what is acceptance, isn't it? Like,
I want to use this term. The world is ending. That's what I want to use.
is this from a biblical thing?
Yes, for me, I want to use this term. No.
No, but Ali, it's fine.
Everyone
This
rolls
is
their
revelation.
No.
Not everybody though. Not
The world
everybody.
is ending. When you start seeing this stuff happening and you start implementing it and you start exposing to it, the world is ending.
And just on that note,
yeah.
Ali, just on that note, because before, on religious backgrounds, you could remove your children from kind of like same-sex couples, like that kind of thing. But the head of Ofsted, by the name of Amanda Spellman, said it's crucial for children to be exposed to differences in society. She said that it's important children knew that there are families that have two mummies and two daddies.
Yes.
And also, what did she say?
Yes. I agree.
How's that any
And she said that lessons were about making sure that children know just enough to know that there are some people who prefer not to get married to somebody of the opposite sex, and sometimes there are families that have two mummies or two daddies. It's about making sure that children who do happen to realize that they themselves may not fit a conventional pattern know that they are not bad or ill.
You know, I want
So this goes to the whole thing of a child feeling like it's a disease, or if they feel like they're gay or something, or transgender, that kind of stuff as well. So I guess from Edison's perspective, that's what they're trying to tackle. But there are some parents that kind of made a different kind of suggestion to this.
I want to ask those people that are actually sitting down and doing this curriculum and writing it down. I actually want to question them, what they go through their head, writing these things down.
What do you mean? What does go through their head?
They've explained
They've explained
it.
what
I understand, but
children about the
no.
differences in society.
What I'm saying, my question was, I want to sit down with them and say, why you want to bring so much of this curriculum into this curriculum in whatever SHRE or.
But they do explain it.
It's not about
So
explaining.
let me just add.
For me
Ali.
to bring something into the table, I would have thought about it, right?
Yeah.
And I want to expose it. I want to bring my agenda
So,
and expose it.
Can I just
Can
I just pause where we are at the moment? So some parents argued this, yeah, and they said, so in regards to this specific school that this happened to, it's called Parkfield Community School, and they argued assistant head Andrew Moffat, who started their lessons, is gay and has been promoting personal beliefs and convictions about universal acceptability of homosexuality as being normal and morally correct.
There you go.
And this comes from different faiths, as in Muslim and Christian faiths, in their concerns. They also go on to argue that promoting personal... I think I've read that part already. Wait. One second. So one mother who wishes to remain anonymous accused the school of planting ideas in children's heads. Her daughter attends Parkfield School, and she said she was too young to be taught what goes on in somebody's bedroom. It's something that we would like to teach our children ourselves. It kind of feels like they're forcing it upon us. And she denied being homophobic, but said it's just not what we're about, and we don't agree with it. It's what a lot of these protesters were also saying about this.
Do you think some of it is just fear assumptions? So
Why fear?
by me identifying that someone is homosexual, why does it now believe that I'm now going to be exploring all the different sexual connotations that come between that sexuality?
Sorry, can you...
So by someone identifying that someone is homosexual,
Yeah.
just identifying that they're homosexual does not mean you're now going to explore everything around that sexuality in terms of what they might do privately in their bedroom.
No, you wouldn't do
their
that, though.
feelings or anything like that.
No, it's not about fear in that sense. You wouldn't do that.
But I think...
as what Koji says, Wherever, for example, I work in the industry as well, where I work. There's loads of them. But as long as it's not coming to
Loads
me,
of them. Help me.
no, what I meant, right? We do have different side of sexuality, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean, as long as they don't bring it close to me or come close to me and expose their gender, then I'm fine. That's what
Come
I
close
meant.
to you and expose the agenda. How do they do that?
I mean, trying to push
What do you
their...
mean? Speak about that. What you talking about? As long as they don't come to you and speak about
What goes on in the bedroom?
Yeah, of course, yeah, I don't want to know that.
That's just private. Yeah,
The
don't
whole
worry.
thing is, if
Okay.
it's going back to the whole kids thing, that isn't going to happen either, though. Exactly what you've just
Yeah,
said.
that's what you said.
What makes you think that, though?
No, but then in your working condition, you accept that there's different
But
kind
that's
of
adults.
families.
That's adult.
Yeah.
Children are different.
But
They have a different mind way of thinking, and they have a different mind way of...
But they're not going to think that bedroom side unless you start talking to them about
Yeah, but
that
then
bedroom.
that's what
That's
I
not
meant.
gonna
That's
come
what I
up-
meant by Pittifar. Will they have the opportunity to come to these children that are already exposed within this and talk to them about wherever?
But what kind of exposure have they been given though? Because you make the exposure sinister. Because when you say they've already been exposed to what? How to
Sexual education.
what? That different body parts or there's different relationships.
Yeah, also
Because they talk about online relationships as well. That's one thing I haven't mentioned actually. So they talk about online relationships, which is to do with the whole grooming and all those kind of stuff as well.
Okay.
Because they are aware of the different kind of people that a child could be in contact with. So they do mention online kind of relationships. As part of the relationship, online relationship is a separate conversation as well.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.
Are schools pushing an agenda to educate our children about homosexuality
For me, yes.
or different types of relationships?
All right, so I'll come in and just say that I will not say schools.
And is it right? Is it right for them to do it?
Yeah, so I would not say not all schools as a whole, and especially in terms of the curriculum that you've explained, I think that's fine. But there are certain locations within the UK where certain subjects or ways in which those lessons are taught are being added in, which I disagree with. So, for example, the whole self-touching and masturbation and stuff like that, and how that's normal and things like that, and it's being taught as young as 6 years old, and it's being a compulsory self-touching lesson.
Yeah, that I disagree.
Yeah, so those and that is a sexual agenda, I believe, that is being pushed in children as young as primary school, which I personally disagree with and have a problem with.
How are you going to lose their virginity then?
Yeah, but in terms of the current curriculum explained and how they'll be teaching the schools and stuff, I genuinely don't think there's a sexual nature to that curriculum which has been developed and being undertaken at the moment.
So the question is, are schools pushing the agenda and is it right? I guess it's
A sexual agenda.
Are the schools pushing a sexual agenda and is it right?
I mean, it doesn't sound like they are. I mean, it sounds like they're trying to teach kids more about acceptance and tolerance of other people's choices and decisions in society. So I don't think they're pushing an agenda. I won't say that. And so that follows on to the next question about, is it right? Because if I don't really feel they're pushing an agenda, then I can't really sort of answer that question as to whether it's right or wrong. But what I will say is, like Mo said, I think it's fine to teach them about relationships and all different forms of relationships in conventional society, because through one way or another they're going to be exposed to that. And kids are curious anyway. Kids throw up random questions from time to time, so they could come to parents with a question like, my friend's got two daddies, two mummies. Why don't I have two daddies? I want to. Those are questions that can genuinely come up, and you can't control what kids say. And so these are conversations that will take place in the household. Now it's entirely up to you if you want to teach your kids those things. But what I will say is, I think parents should have the choice as to whether they want their kids to be taught that sort of information in school. I think they should be able to remove their kids from those lessons if they, for whatever reason, want to teach their kids or educate those kids on those sort of things within society and at home. But what I will say is, I don't agree about teaching kids about touching themselves and all that sort of stuff. And even teaching them about transgenders, I don't agree with them being taught that in school. I don't think or at that age anyway. I think if that's going to be taught or delivered to them, and I think that should be dealt with when they get to secondary school. I don't agree that should be dealt with at primary school, more so because kids at that age can be quite impressionable, and I think what it does do, it does to some degree plant a seed in their mind. And at that age, no kid knows what they want permanently because things change as they get older. They might say one thing at one point. I mean, I remember I was watching a documentary by Louis Theroux. He was meeting young kids at the age of 8 and 9, who were saying that they were one gender over another, and I just, it was really, I'm not entirely sure where they got these feelings from, but for the most part, I feel like if it is taught in schools, at that age, kids will become professional. So that's my.
If transgender, you're talking about specific transgender.
Just specific to that.
Okay.
So that's not a sexual nature in terms of them trying to.
No, because that to me that has really.
I have to move this conversation along.
That has not okay. I'm trying to say, what does that have to do with relationships? Because that's more about people choosing their sexuality. It's not necessarily about
It goes in tandem because you choosing your sexuality, if you call it a choice, if someone choosing their sexuality could mean they'll be in a different family setup. Because when you're talking about relationships, that's when they talk about the different family setups, which could be a gay person with a gay family, lesbian family, those kind of stuff. So I feel like it goes in tandem because this is essentially what people are talking about. It's that kind of stuff. So I feel like it's together personally. I think personally, in regards to that question, is the school pushing an agenda? Yes, I feel like they're pushing an agenda, and I feel like it's a Western thing. I remember a couple of years back, under David Cameron's leadership, they tried to push an agenda for African countries to make people of the same sex, that kind of stuff within the communities acceptable and stuff. And I know a lot of the African nations were opposed to that. Is it right? I feel like it's right because of the environment that we live in. So in a Western environment where these kids are going to be exposed to it, I feel like it is the right thing to be doing because if not, you take your child and go to Africa, go to places that are not doing it. That's how I personally feel. So I guess, really, be one and all. That's all I have to say.
Our school pushing agenda, is it right for me, is wrong, and because
do you think they are pushing an agenda?
Well, they are pushing it, and I think they shouldn't push it. That's what I said is they shouldn't do it, so it's wrong. And as what Cam touched into, doing this is exposing them and is planting a seed. That's where it starts from. And to be honest, this agenda that is...
What part? Are you agreeing with Cameron, the transgender part, the sexual part, the relationship part?
The transgender part and the sexual part. And
the same-sex couples?
Yeah.
That part as well, okay.
And the way I'm seeing this unfolding is that the government, I don't know who has sat down and put all of this together and given it to the education, to the school. Whoever is doing this behind the closed door want to expose this, want to bring this down and make sure that it's exposed, it's been done. I don't know how it is. I don't know what the long run it is, what it's going to affect, but I can just see it in the long run. It's not going to be good. And from primary school, exposing to this, I think it's too early. It's too worrying as well. And as a father myself, I wouldn't want my child to be exposed to any of this because instead I'll have to teach my children at home, self-taught as well. You guys are just tapped on. Personally, I do agree with some part of what you guys are saying, and what Kojo says that okay, if we don't want our children to be taught this, then take it to Africa. But it's that side of it. I can see Africa also being part of it as well. It might not be exposed to it now, but I can see it being exposed to it maybe in the next 50 years or something, but I can see it happening. So if Africa is exposed to it, the whole world is exposed to it. What are we going to do? What is the control to it?
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LDN Perspective podcast. Please get in contact with us. We want to create more of an organic platform. So if you have any questions, please check our Instagram page, which is LDN Perspective. You could also reach us on Twitter, Perspective LDN. And please, you could always drop us an email at ldnperspective@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Perspectives, different views, one voice.